Managed conflict is how you get better deals. I've spent the last 43 years as a career investment banker and asset manager working for some of the world's leading financial institutions. My work covered many different jurisdictions, and I spent the last 16 years of it financing, developing and managing renewable and sustainable infrastructure projects in emerging markets in South and Southeast Asia. I've retired in 2023, and after I retired, I stepped away and realised that I still had more energy and wanted to give something back. And I've been very fortunate in my career to go to many wonderful places, meet many interesting and exciting people, and to do things where, particularly in the last 16 years, the investments were designed to make a difference. They were impact investments. So when I retired, I realised that I wanted to do something else, and I wanted to give something back, using primarily the skills that I developed as an investment banker and asset manager. A lawyer friend of mine suggested that the skills I demonstrated would suit very well for mediation. Now, clearly having had no formal background in mediation, but having been able to demonstrate the soft skills of a mediator over many years, I needed to find the best way of being accredited to give comfort to people that I hopefully will work with, to give comfort to them that I had a framework and a formal understanding of the service that I was trying to offer. So I did my research, guided by my lawyer friend, I have to say, who recommended CEDR, and that's what guided me first to CEDR, and then it was in discussions with CEDR's management that I chose to do the international accreditation. When you're tackling an infrastructure project anywhere in the world, but heightened particularly when you're in an emerging market, you're working with multiple stakeholders. And frankly, I often describe the role as herding cats. It's the business equivalent of herding cats. You have very, very strong government priorities and government positions. You have very strong local sensitivities and local customs. You often have big international engineering firms and equipment providers. So you have all of these different stakeholders mixed up with a group of different lawyers, different legal processes, and more importantly, different languages. And it's a recipe for misunderstanding, miscommunication, and problems. So back to the herding cats analogy, my principal role was to keep everybody focused and going in the same direction. It didn't always go to plan, and in fact, to be perfectly honest, it never went to plan. And I think that that's probably one of the things that A, I most enjoyed in the job, and B, what I think provides the basis for them moving now into mediation. There are many different examples of things going wrong. One of my favourite stories very early on is that we were importing Chinese manufactured heavy equipment, and the Chinese engineers were there basically to help install the equipment and train local Philippine workers. The Philippine workers didn't necessarily understand that and were very concerned about job security. So we had lots of conflict, lots of fist fights between different workers, and it became very clear that we had to resolve this low-level conflict in order to keep the projects on track. The solution was actually very, very simple. The solution was to recognise that the biggest concern for the Philippine workers was their security. They didn't want foreign workers coming onto their island and stealing their jobs. It was also clear to me that the Chinese engineers were incentivised in the engineering contract to provide those training services, and they were on short-term contracts, but that had not been communicated clearly and accurately. So the solution was to create an accreditation program, a training program effectively, where the Chinese worker was rewarded for training the Philippine worker, who at the end of the training exercise would receive a certificate to say, yes, you've achieved this level of work, and sometimes a small financial reward. The financial reward actually was not really, it was tokenism. It wasn't really the issue. The issue was to create the comfort that the workers were not going to be losing their jobs to foreign nationals. Once we introduced that, the problem went away overnight. And I think that that's a very good example of using the mediation skills that CEDR promote in a non-legal framework in order to solve an immediate practical problem. I think it's always been part of my leadership process to create safe spaces for everybody to contribute. And the two examples I often focus on are the fact that no matter how junior the person was in the team, I would encourage them, if they saw something that related to any transaction or related to a market movement, that they should speak up without fear. And the rationale I would say to them is, look, at my age and experience, I may read the first paragraph of the article, I may read the last paragraph, I may skim through the bit in the middle and miss something. So it was very important that if you saw something, don't be afraid, just say, have you seen? So I think that that's the first part, give people the confidence to have a voice, a safe space in which to have a voice. The second thing is to remove the fear of failure and the fear of what happens when something goes wrong. So again, the same advice I've given to every member of staff that's worked with me, and frankly, it's the same advice I gave to my daughters when they turned into their teenage years, was you will make a mistake. I know you'll make a mistake because I still make mistakes. But the quicker you raise the flag, the quicker you tell me there's a mistake, the quicker that I can deploy that same agent experience to help resolve and mitigate the mistake. And by giving people that confidence to fail, confidence to lose, was how you create a safe environment for everybody to have an opinion, for everybody to speak up, and for everybody to bring their whole self to the job. I think it's vital, but then it comes back to the fact that I started all those years ago on a trading floor in a period where everything was done on open outcry. And so I often describe open outcry trading floors to those who are too young to remember as I was shouting at people for a living and them shouting back at me. But it taught me two very important lessons. First lesson was never over-celebrate your victories and never over-mourn your losses, because today's one day, tomorrow's another day. The second thing I learned very early on was, of course, managed conflict is how you get better deals. Better transactions. Managed conflict where everybody can have their opinion. You can fight tooth and nail over it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're all professionals. You shake hands. Whoever's won the argument wins the argument and moves on again without over-celebrating their victory and without you over-mourning your loss. And you go over the pub and have a beer together. And I think that it's very similar to performance in a sports team. In a sports team, if you put the ball in your own net, I reserve the right to make fun of you remorselessly for scoring an own goal. But I don't cross a line into personalising it, because tomorrow I may be the one that puts the ball in the net and you will have the right to remorselessly make fun of me. So I think it's that same approach. That's a very good question. I was struck as I was doing the CEDR training as to how much or how big a gap there is between soft skills, what you intuitively do, and how easy, or the difficulties of attaining those skills in a hard fashion, how to teach those skills. Because so much of it is about communication, and communication is in itself how you read signals and how you respond to those signals. I think I came away with a sense that the CEDR training, because it focused on positive and active listening as a physical exercise, that was a skill that really everybody should try and acquire. I've always viewed myself as an active listener. You know, if I go and sit and listen to, I still use records. If I put a record on, for me it's not background noise. I will put the record on, and I actively listen to the record. And I gave the example of to the course that I attended. I gave the example of listening versus hearing. I use Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. If you hear Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, you hear this patriotic, loud, anthemic, rumbustious song. If you listen to it with the words in front of you, you realise it's anything but patriotic. It's an anti-war Vietnam song about the misuse and abuse of an underclass. That's the difference between hearing and listening. So I think that the need for those active listening skills is what needs to be trained, because frankly, without active listening, the other skills are almost redundant. I think there are two levels now that we operate. On the first level, there's so much background noise. Everybody's shouting and nobody's listening. And so I would make the CEDR training and the active listening, I'd make it compulsory training for anybody in any leadership position of any seniority, because I think that that is now an absolute required skill. Secondly, we're surrounded by conflict on so many different levels now. And the comfort that we might have felt as a society 10, 20 years ago is completely gone. In a time of conflict, whether it's national, corporate or individual, it just just emphasizes even more strongly the importance of mediation, the importance of being able to find somebody who can help us communicate with those with whom we may not necessarily agree, or maybe even more importantly, with those with whom we can't communicate. Find a third party that can do that. The more of us that do this course, the more of us that acquire these skills, and the more of us that can provide the comfort to third parties that we know how to deploy these skills, I think the better. When I heard that a large part of the score for doing the course and securing the accreditation was based on role play, I was a little concerned, it'd be fair to say. When we did meet the other contestants a few days before, and I found that the other participants in the course were all high-flying lawyers, senior arbitrators in their own jurisdictions, I was even more concerned. I consulted my daughters, who have clearly had role-play experience in their professional environments. I consulted my daughters, as I'd never done one of these before. So yes, the first time we started to do the role-playing, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a real challenge. And you know what? By day 2, I'd fallen in love with role plays. You can teach an old dog new tricks. I absolutely loved it. And I think that it worked for 2 reasons. The first reason it worked was that because the CEDR team leading the training were clearly skilled in how to create a safe environment in which beginners like me could participate. So I think that that's the first. But the second reason that it worked was the other 11 participants were all so invested. Firstly, they were all incredibly high quality, but they were all so invested in the role-playing process that once we started, I was there. I was that negotiator. I was that combatant. I was absolutely there. I think the only thing I would say is, and I'd felt this for a while, when you watch these poor sportsmen, but you know, Wimbledon, you've just lost the Wimbledon final and somebody shoves a microphone up your nose. How do you think it went? And they look confused. So you've done an hour's, for these role plays, you've done an hour of being viewed and watched. You're in the zone. The adrenaline's pumping because you've been jumping between one virtual meeting and another virtual meeting, and then the clock goes, ping, your hour's up. And the first thing that happens is your combatants all disappear, and you've got the invigilator shoving a microphone up, saying, "So Tony, how do you think that went?" Well, I think I had a good game there. Yeah, that was the challenge. But I'd sign up to do it again. To move to the next stage, I think is about looking back to the core of the investment strategy for the last 16 years, the environmental and social aspects of those investments, because I think it's absolutely vital. It's vital, we saw in the last few weeks, we've had the 11th hottest month for the 11th month in a row. So the importance of removing fossil fuels and cleaning up the atmosphere and all of that sustainability, the message behind that is even more vital today. And yet it's at a time when the environment against which it's being done is even harder. Conflict, the reverse of globalization, the deglobalization that's going on. The financial markets, a lot of the ESG boom was because funds were looking for a differentiator in a zero interest rate environment. That's gone. Now we've got positive interest rates. So the macro environment against which we're trying to do sustainability has completely changed at the point where it's most needed. And I think that my value add is helping people to understand where that investment needs to be made and helping bring these disparate elements that we talked about earlier on, governments, local communities, international engineering companies, bring them all together, help them to talk to each other, help them when it goes wrong, because it will go wrong, I guarantee that. So I think that that's the next stage for me, is using those skills of the last 16 years, 40 years, using those skills validated by the CEDR accreditation to say, yes, we can do this.